Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar. The Practical Guitarist Podcast is brought to you by Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Great Lakes Guitar Pickups provides fantasy tones at prices a practical guitarist will love. Featuring top-notch construction, attention to detail, and a fully custom product, if you can dream it, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups can probably build it. Follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. Are you a regular listener? Why not? David here reminding you of all the ways you can participate in the Practical Guitarist Podcast. Subscribe using your chosen podcast app. Review us on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Google Play. Find our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Practical Guitarist or on Twitter as @PracGuitarist. Support the show. Merchandise is available in our Threadless store at practicalguitaristpodcast.threadless.com. And donate to us via Patreon, available at patreon.com/practicalguitarist. Reach out to us directly via email at questions@practicalguitarist.com. Hello, Jim.
Hi, David.
Before we start this episode and before we get deep into things, we want to go ahead and take a moment and just kind of recognize that we're doing this episode on the evening of Kobe Bryant's death. Obviously not a musician, influenced music in a number of ways because there's a whole set of artists that were interested in the sport and mentioned him by name in the last 10, 15 years in hip hop music and things like that. Yeah. And we just wanted to take a moment to recognize his passing, his daughter's passing as she was on the helicopter flight with him, her friend, and the whole thing. It's a terrible situation. Hopefully by the time this episode airs, we'll have more details about what's happened there. If for anybody that's, connected to sports or interested in sports, this is a pretty sad day in a real big mess. So let's take a moment here and give them a moment of silence, and then we'll get started with the episode. Well, so lots of things have been happening. We're in post NAMM time,
yep.
Right?
Yep.
And actually, I don't want to start off with the NAMM topic. Actually, what I want to start off with is talking about Rick Beato's video about string gauges.
Yep.
I think so. I want to first preface: if you haven't seen the video, check it out. It's actually a good video. I don't necessarily agree with the findings from a certain perspective. Obviously, what they're saying is true, right? There's no doubt about that.
Right.
I think there are some misunderstandings about the results, and I think there are some minor misrepresentations there. But I think those minor misrepresentations add up to big questions.
Right.
So, Jim, do you want to describe the video for our listeners?
Yeah. So what happened is Rick Beato, Dave Amarato, some producer, I can't remember his name. It's not because he's important. I just can't remember his name offhand. And Rhett Shull were there. And what they did was Rick and Rhett went through guitars from gauge 11 all the way down to gauge 8. And then what they did was they played same riffs, in the different gauges. What I found interesting about this video was, and this is a point that Rick made, and he actually made a follow-up video today, his live video. He referred to his last video. He said he wasn't saying don't use 10s or don't use 11s, because the video came out like, oh, you shouldn't use it. A bunch of people, of course, shouted, they were saying you shouldn't use these videos, and that's not what he was saying. What he was saying is, instead of doing one thing, you can do another to affect the tightness of the low end of your tone. So what they were doing was showing how lighter gauge strings don't push the heavy tones as much, therefore tighten up lower notes in lower registers. So he wasn't saying that's the only way, because obviously it's being done and has been done by several artists who use heavier gauge strings and don't use that. Um, you know, they get their tone just fine.
I think so. This is why I interpreted the video differently, and I didn't mean to think that he was saying you should do this, right? But what I get from it was like, here we're going to do this test, and it was very much from weighted from the side of, this is a Rick Beato. I know something you don't, kind of wink wink, because he makes it clear like he's been using light gauge strings for a very long time,
Right.
and they make it clear in the intro clip, right, where they're all sitting around and they're talking about it.
Oh yeah.
And so then he goes on to show it, and they do this demonstration, and
Right.
it's like, well, yeah, we can hear the sonic differences, but
Yeah.
it's very much like, yeah, I'm doing it right. Kind of, that's the way I saw it. Was like,
I, yeah,
yeah,
and
okay.
I took it like this. So he had been so obviously having watched the whole thing and then watching the follow up, but even
Yeah,
before the follow up, having watched it, he was like at NAM. We didn't want to talk too much about NAM yet, but at NAM he had run into who's the guy Friedman, Dave
yeah,
Friedman,
Marty Friedman.
and
Not
Dave
Marty Friedman, Dave Friedman.
other Friedman,
The amp designer Friedman, not the good
right?
Friedman. I mean,
Yeah, not the musician.
yeah,
Anyway, so he was talking to Dave Friedman, and Dave Friedman said, "Oh yeah, you can just lighten up your gauge strings." And Rick Beato had always played eights, and that was his things, except for certain guitars where he plays nines, and acoustic guitars, which like me, he plays 12s or 13s. So I'm a nine guy, and I have been thinking about going to eight and a halves or eights for a while. And the reason isn't because of what a lot of people think, and Beato is the same reason I'm looking at going. As we get a little older, our fingers don't tend to want to work as hard, and it hurts. And so it's a little harder to do bends and do all this other stuff. So lightening up the strings, and they even talked about how Stevie Ray Vaughan lightened up his strings later in life because he was having some problems with his hands,
all right,
and then
all
he
right.
would work towards and I've heard a lot of musicians say the same thing.
That's
They'll
that's the
start off on lighter gauge strings in the beginning of a tour or whatever, and then
and
they'll
then they
work
go up to a
towards
heavier gauge set in
heavier
the
gauge
middle. And
strings.
Jeff Beck is notorious for that. He's talked about it several times in interviews, how they start off with nines, and by the end of the tour, he's using nines or tens or 11s.
Right.
In Stevie Ray Vaughan's case, I've heard that said, oh yeah, he ended his career using tens. Uh, that's not based in any real point of fact, because there are people that are very close to him, that were very close to him, his brother included, um, that claim that they wanted him to, and that he did for a bit, but ended up going back to like 11s or 12s partway through the tour, because he was not comfortable with the feel of the guitar or whatever. And that was the same thing. They actually put a different neck on number one, and then he made them put the original neck back on it, because they were trying to get away with like not having to deal with all the headstock breaks and stuff that number one's gone through over the years. So when Fender pulled that guitar out to do the crazy reissue thing they did about 20 years ago, it's probably 15 years ago at this point. Um, they pulled that guitar out and they measured it, and it had tens on, it had 11s or 12s. I can't remember on it at that time, which it was strung up and put in a vault that way, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. I don't think the strings were actually, because I'm trying to remember the DVD. I think the strings were just wrapped, and like it was stored with no strings on it, but it was stored, it's like stored in a climate controlled environment, the whole thing. But yeah, so it's an interesting concept. Here's part of what I take away from this video, right? So like, if you listen to the clips, what you'll hear is I think they do 11s, 10s, 9s, and 8s. And the
Yep.
11s and the 11s have tons of bass, right?
Yep.
To the point where they're almost muddy. And they're running now. You got to remember, they're running everything through a Marshall TSL, which is
Yep.
a fairly bright amp. And it's not notorious for having like a lot of low end clarity.
Right.
If you put 11s through a Fender amp, it's going to sound really different.
That's what I was going to say. The 11s through, say, a super reverb or
Yeah, that's going to sound. It's going to be Stevie Ray Vaughan territory, like big
yeah.
fat low mids and
Yep.
big fat low end, and it's going to be fairly defined.
Yep.
Whereas Then they went down to the tens, and the tens were like woolly, but they weren't. They were a lot more defined than the 11s were, especially in the low end territory. The nines had really great low end definition, and they had they were getting significantly more clarity in the high end, right? And then of
Right.
course you go down to the eights, and it's all high end. It's like upper mids and high end. So here's the thing that they miss out on this video. What they don't talk about is the fundamentals.
Right.
So around 400 hertz, which is firmly in lower mids, right? Or low end. I consider low end and about 250 hertz. 400 hertz is significantly affected by going from tens to nines to eights. Okay. And they just completely neglect this as part of their conversation. The guitar, yes, it is a harmonic instrument. There's a lot of high end harmonics that go on that help reinforce that sound. But if you don't have a fundamental, you're not going to cut through. It's just not going to happen. You're going to hear a bunch of noise, but no actual fundamental note coming through. So my whole thing was like, I think nines and tens are where it's at. I think nines sound great for, if you're trying to do the tube screamer without a tube screamer thing, where you need like a lot of low end clarity going on. I'm thinking about styles like funk, and I'm thinking about like country, and maybe some more like heavy metal type stuff where the low end isn't. It needs to be more defined than it does big, right? And where tens shine is if you don't want to have all that top end going on. So like if you're a lead player, you might want to look at tens because you don't want to be razor blades. You can think there are some, and they mentioned a bunch of examples of lead players who played like sevens and
Yeah.
eights, and Frank Zappa was one of them. And I believe he played sevens or 7.5,
Yeah.
and you can definitely hear it in his playing. That's how he got that razor blade sound. So I think they wanted to make out like there was. I don't want to say they wanted to make out like there was a superior choice, but they felt like you're going to get more clarity if you're doing this and that. And I really think it just depends on what you're doing, because there's so much more choice going on there, from amplifier to speaker and all the other things we talk about in the tone pyramid, that are vital to that end result. That I think your strings matter, but I think your strings matter more from the perspective of like a feel thing. Because you can,
Yeah.
so like they said, you can supplement. You can throw a tube screamer in your signal and cut off all the bass.
Right. Actually, in the follow-up, so there were two follow-up videos. Rhett Shull did a follow-up,
Yeah,
and Rick Beato did a follow-up. And interestingly, Beato actually mentioned he didn't mention our tone pyramid, but he did mention what we have in our tone pyramid.
yeah.
And folks, if you don't have a tone pyramid shirt,
You need to get one.
check out our
Yeah,
Teespring page. But
that's not Teespring.
or not Teespring. What is it?
I don't even remember. It's on our Facebook group. It's in the announcements. Go look.
Yeah. Anyway, we have a T-shirt for that, and what I find interesting and funny is he mentioned the speaker directly. As a matter of fact, to Friedman, he was talking about how a lot of the choices at NAMM. Of course, you got to remember it's all loud at NAMM. Sonically, I don't think it matters that much, but he was talking about how a lot of people were using the wrong cabinets for their amps to express how they wanted to feel.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, the cabinet. We've talked about cabinets on the show a dozen times, and one time in particular in recent memory. But I absolutely agree with him. I think so. Like, all right, so these guys are showing you like you bump down your strings to eights or nines, and then all of a sudden you got all this low end disappearing, and you got all this high end clarity. You could do that if you have tens by switching from V30s to greenbacks, or from greenbacks to creambacks, or
right.
to a Celestian blue if you want to get up more upper mids, or
Yeah, and they even mentioned throwing some EQ in the mix, and then changing out your speaker cabinet.
well, not even just that. I mean, even going from open back to closed back is going to have a massive impact on what your end result is.
The difference between running a Vox amp and a Fender amp.
Yeah. Like that level of difference. And can you picture that if you had a Vox or a Fender head and you were just swapping
Exactly.
like closed back? I mean, the possibilities become virtually limitless at that point.
Oh, heavens.
So the other thing that I took away from this conversation about strings is like I watched the comments and we actually talked about it in our own group, and people get, I mean, they get pretty defensive
Oh my
about
gosh.
their string choice. Not in our group so much, but on in the comments on that group, it's like they get super defensive about it. And Jim, you and I have done testing. We did testing for the show
Right.
of strings, and we know that, you know, hey, in general, the differences are minute.
Right.
I've done testing prior to the show between nickel and conventional alloy and all that stuff.
Yep.
And the one thing I actually really liked, and this is part I want to focus on. So they had their little powwow in the beginning of the video discussing this, because I didn't live through all this time, right? I've been the entire time I've been a guitar player, it's been nines and tens. Everybody was nines, tens, and then if you were down tuning 11s or 12s.
Right.
And they're talking about like back in the day when like everybody was using sevens and eights.
Yeah. So I want to talk to that because when I first started playing in the early 70s, when I first started using electrics, there were a lot of people using eights. Eights were pretty much the common thing, and so it was. It's been. I'm not really sure when nines became like de facto, but it almost became because if you think about it, Eddie Van Halen used eights, two and down a half step, and so I sometimes wonder, when did nines become popular, and I'm thinking it's because there was that whole heavy metal thing in the 80s when so many people were playing balanced guitars, you know, the Floyd Roses and stuff, that they were they had a lot of aggressive playing going on. Because Ingve Malmsteen uses sevens or eights, right?
Ingve's an eights guy.
Yeah, so
He's the one, and I don't remember seeing EVH playing eights. I thought he was a nines guy, but I can remember. I can definitely attest to Ingve playing eights, and that's absolutely mind-boggling to me. That guy's using eights, but
yeah, but
you can
I
hear it in his sound for sure. That's there's no doubt about that. But
and I know Tony Iommi played light strings.
well, but he did because of his disability.
His finger.
Yeah, is that disability if you injure yourself? I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, so that's the whole, you know, news there. Like, but you know, Billy Gibbons uses sevens.
Yeah,
You know, Frank Zappa used 7.5s. Jimi Hendrix used a rather unorthodox set. I mean,
yep.
Was it like 9-38 or something?
Yeah, it was weird. It was a heavier bottom, or I mean, a heavier top and lighter
Yeah,
bottom.
yeah.
Which
Well,
was
but
the
that kind of
exact
makes sense
opposite.
because his pickups were upside down and the magnets were not readjusted, so he would obviously be wanting to use heavy. You know what I mean? Like to get the same kind
Right.
of response, he would probably have to mess with the gauges.
Yep.
And I think that's more close to a balanced tension set from him too. And I remember reading that from Roger Mayer actually mentioning that Hendrix's guitar strings, he kind of stumbled on the balanced tension thing because of the
Right.
string
The
gauges.
upside down pickups or the backwards pickups.
Yeah. So, you know, the funny thing is this kind of directly relates to another thing that people don't talk a lot about, which is picks and pick material, and actually pick thickness is, or I would say malleability is more important than thickness, because I've seen some pretty thin picks that are harder than what I play.
Well, while you're going in that direction, Billy Gibbons uses a peso.
Yeah, Brian May
And
uses the sixpence. You know.
Yep, and yeah, that's what I was going to say. Brian May uses a sixpence, which they only mint for him.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think they still mint them, but they minted him a truckload,
That's
so
what I was going to
he'll
say.
never run
They
out.
minted him a bunch, right?
Yeah.
So that they minted him because they were out.
They have his face and the Queen on it.
They have yeah, which I thought was funny. But anyway, so if you're looking at that, don't think before people get this preconceived notion. Before we jump into this, don't think that just because you use a thick pick, you need thick strings. That's not That's not what we're about to say.
No. There's no correlation there whatsoever. But what I was going to point out is that some really unorthodox like uses of picking and the plectrum thickness, like Paul Gilbert, he uses
Right.
like lights, right?
Light.
Light
Yeah.
picks, and
And yet
Eddie Van
still
Halen
groovy.
uses lights,
Yeah.
which like a Fender, what would be the equivalent of like a Fender Light. And the reason why Paul Gilbert did it was because he wanted to make a conscious shift away from doing all the shred stuff, and he needed something to slow him down. So he started
Yep.
using lighter gauge strings, and he started using thinner picks because it
Yep.
forced him to like stop and think about what he was doing.
Yep.
Um, and I mean, I know people who use really light picks to play really aggressive forms of music, and it's because this allows them to get their hand going more wildly and
Yep.
not have as much, craziness going on. Um, I'm really conventional by today's standards. I mean, I'm tens and really big, fat, thick picks, which seems to be kind of the norm now. Maybe I should switch. Um, no, I'm that guy. I'm like, yeah, everybody else is doing it. I shouldn't do it.
Right. Yeah. No, you're not going to follow that. I so as you know, I use a 1 millimeter. I don't know if that's thick, but I use a millimeter, and I use a small pick, as you know. Um,
Yeah, you use the
and
Jazz 3.
yep, and yet, and I've gone to using this little Ernie Ball thing.
I can't.
Uh,
Oh, okay.
these
Prodigies.
prodigies. But anyway, so I use Jazz threes and prodigies. I've been using the prodigy more. I'm not sure really why, but I do like the way that it sharpens up on the end when I get to when I use it. But um, what I was going to say is I'm the same way. Nines and 1 millimeter, you know,
All right.
and so I'm probably using a little bit thinner strings and a little bit thinner pick.
So did anybody see the Floyd Rose guitar? The
Oh
new
man,
Floyd
that
Rose
is
guitar.
now I. So did you see Tim Pierce's video on it
Yeah.
with Floyd there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So look, Floyd Rose makes great stuff. I've seen their bridges on guitars before, and they've always done immaculate things. Even when they
Right.
were licensing bridges, it seems like the licensed stuff was decent. Um,
Yep.
and I wanna say that like I don't think I don't think the product they're putting out is bad, but I think it's
I'm,
ridiculous.
I'm just wondering. So
So what
Pierce
this
says it works, but I can't
I'm
help
sure
but
it
think
does,
there's some
Jim.
snake oil in there.
I'm
I
sure
just
it does, but here's the problem. It doesn't fix the problem. You can't play any other guitars. So if so the Floyd Rose guitar, the new one that's come out, it's got a hump, right? That actually covers the pickups. It doesn't go over them, but it the way that it's concave is so the pickup never actually sticks out beyond the hump. And the idea is that if you pick, you're never gonna get the pick too deep into the guitar's body and have more pick hitting the string than needs to be necessary, right? Which okay, but truthfully, the pick should never even extend to the point where it could touch a fret.
right.
And this is not higher than the frets because then the guitar would be unplayable. It wouldn't work. So
It would
here,
seem to me. Yeah, go ahead.
so
I'm going to tell you how I would fix it.
so
How
here's
I fix it.
here's the bigger problem, right? So now everybody's like, oh yeah, so like you want to learn to play fast, you buy these Floyd Rose guitars, and it's like, well, yeah, but it's a crutch. You
Right.
need to learn to do it for real, because just because the body's in the way doesn't mean that you're going to adjust your technique accordingly. I mean, you're going to switch back to another guitar and you're going to stick the pick all the way through the strings, And for strumming, you kind of want the guitar to make the pick to make more contact, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing the little
Right.
triplet things and the metal stuff, you don't necessarily want it to. But anyway, Jim,
I,
go.
yeah, I was just going to say when I was doing that, when I was getting hung up on the thing, it's because I was using longer, bigger picks. Like you said, I was doing the strumming thing. I went from acoustic to electric, and so I thought you're supposed to have a big amount of
Yeah,
picking.
because I mean, that's part of the acoustic sound, right?
What you do, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, "No, you're supposed to choke up on it and have a little pickup." I would never have to use that Floyd Rose thing because I would never hit that thing. because I only have like this minute amount of pick that sticks out.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's my point.
And all I do is minute movement of my index finger to get a little more or a little less out of the.
All right,
Out of,
here's my pet peeve. I've had people tell me I don't play strats because the pickup in the middle gets in the way. Gets in
right.
the way. How much?
How much pick do you
I'm
have?
not gonna swear. How much pick are you putting through the strings?
Right.
Like seriously? I mean, what? Are you playing with a Dorito? I mean,
I know.
oh my gosh.
Are you
I can play
Carlos
directly
Santana?
over the string, over the
Play with that
pickups.
gigantic thing that he uses?
Yeah, I mean, I play. Yeah, like Carlos Santana. Um,
Yeah, that huge triangular thing.
he uses the giant triangle, and actually, he's
Yeah,
using. I think he's using medium sized triangles now, because
yeah,
he's been getting them from VPick for a while. But anyway, he has a pick deal through them. Um,
yeah.
but he's endorsed for everything.
He's endorsed.
He's the
He
only
has
Dumble endorser.
he's he's the only person I know that's endorsed for like his shaving creams
Yeah.
endorsement. But, I mean, but what I'm saying is, how much pick do you have out?
It should be less than I would say less than a centimeter. I think a centimeter is pushing it. I think it needs to be less than half a centimeter or something ridiculous like that. I don't have a ruler in front of me, or I tell you.
I don't know. That's how much I have sticking out. How
Yeah,
much
that
is it?
sounds about right. I mean, that sounds about right.
That's it.
And actually, I try to think
Like I
of.
said, I do this to get more, and I do this to get less. That's it. It's a little movement.
I don't know. And if you have problems with this, like the easiest way for you to learn to do single note lines like that is to act like you're pushing the string into the body of the guitar and pulling the string away from the body of the guitar with the pick in a
Yeah.
very minute motion. You don't want to actually like push the string. You don't want to have the pick sideways. You know what I mean? But you want to have it like maybe
Here's a slight angle.
30 degrees or something. Instead of 90, it would be like 60 degrees. So you just rotate a little bit. But
It's not like with Troy Grady sitting there with
that's exactly what I'm referencing, though. I mean, so if you don't know who Troy Grady is and you want to learn about that, go check out his stuff. He's got a great series of stuff called Cracking the Code, and they are excellent.
Awesome videos, people. If you really want to see how somebody,
you want to get into the mechanics,
strings, like the truly slow mo. He does this stuff that's just, we've talked about it before a long time ago, but he does these videos where he takes it right down where he slowly, and he's got all these angles. He actually has a camera that
they're GoPros that he mounts to the guitar.
Yeah, he mounts them right to the fretboard.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't mount the musician only has so much fretboard because there's a great big camera sitting on a U-bolt thing.
I love when he gets to the players who have like super unorthodox styles, because there was a dude on there that was like playing arpeggios and alternate picking them, like sweep arpeggios but alternate picking them. I'm like, how does this guy even do this? Like, and then they show in there, but he does mention he's like I do hit the peak of my ability by doing this, and he's like, I cannot go any faster than where I'm at right now.
And it's funny to see some of their reactions when they see their styles.
Yeah, because then they look at it and they're like, I didn't even know I was doing that. Like, Joe Stump was doing some stuff, and then he played it back for him. He's like, I do that? Like, I didn't even know. Which, people like Paul Gilbert are great teachers because he's taken the time to examine what he does. And that's so much of guitar playing, we don't stop and think about what we do, Like, the first thing the first lesson they teach people now is like, when you play guitar and you play single note lines, like, you mute all the other strings. Nobody was teaching that when I was starting. You just did it because that's what made it sound best, right? Like, you figured it out on your own. But if you never examined how you do it, you're not even going to realize you're doing it. And that's why it wasn't taught, because nobody had thought to think about, that little stuff. Anyway, so the reason I actually brought up the Floyd Rose guitar is because of Floyd Rose's deep connection to metal music. And Floyd Rose, even though they make premium parts that go on pretty much every brand's guitars. I mean, Gibson buys Floyd Rose parts. Fender buys Floyd Rose parts. Pretty much everyone at some point in time has bought Floyd Rose parts. The only company I can think of right now that doesn't have a Floyd Rose equipped guitar is Music Man.
Yeah.
So here's where this conversation is going. So I sent Jim a actually before we talk. Well, let's go ahead. We'll talk about it now. We'll do it because I
You
want
want
to
to
talk
go
about
into
what
that now?
I want to
I
talk
thought we
about.
were saving this till later.
Yeah, we were, but I think because we're on NAM, it's a perfect segue. So the I've noticed, and I was watching Ola England's video where he did the walk around of NAM in the morning, which is actually really interesting and kind of killer because you can hear dudes who got up really early to come down and play, and they're just playing, and you can hear them in the background and stuff, just ripping it up, and they're really good players. But that's
Yeah,
not what they're going to be playing in 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be the straight up NAM affair. Um,
yeah.
and I enjoyed that, but he goes around and he looks at all of the metal flavored guitar companies, the boutique guys, and he himself has solar guitars, which it's been built by several different companies at this point, but they're a quality piece, and I don't know anybody who said that they own a solar and it's bad. Um, so I wanted to kind of talk about this because I first off, some of these guitar companies, um, you may not have heard of. And I think they're worth noting because they're doing things that, I mean, really is pushing the design of the instrument in totally different directions. Um, but also because you see these designs coming out from Ibanez and from ESP Ltd and from Kiesel. I mean, let's face it. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I own a Kiesel. I love Kiesel, but I'll tell you right now, Kiesel rips everybody off. That's how they've been doing it for years.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
I do think right now Kiesel has the most
But
unique guitar lineup they've ever had, but that's not saying a lot. Um,
Kiesel is up there.
right.
I mean, let's face it, they're good.
They're on the cusp of being one of these brands right now, which is really crazy to me. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, so the point is that these designs go into Schecter and all these other companies, and they like kind of get filtered, and then they
yeah,
come out and they're homogenized. They're a little bit
yeah,
more for the masses, and so you could see a blues player playing a Schecter in some cases. Um, but
yeah.
yeah,
So
not necessarily some of these other guitars.
I want to stress something when it comes to that because I really do. One of the things that these companies that we're going to mention, with the exception of Kiesel, is most of these companies aren't worried about getting outside of their target audience.
No.
Their their target audience is or audience is the Ola Englands and his fans of the world. The people who use this type of equipment. So we're gonna be talking about gear that does not you're not going to see local blues player playing this
No.
guitar because they're not targeted towards them. They don't care. They don't want that person buying
All right. So
for the most part.
I provided Jim with a reference list, and the first guitar on the reference list was obviously Strandberg. But I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about Strandberg. It's not because Strandberg's good or bad. I think Strandberg is a very unique
It's
company,
awesome.
but I don't really consider them to be outside the mainstream at this point. Like they have eclipsed that. The second that Sweetwater picked them up, and everybody was clamoring to get their guitars. They're waitlisted and everything else. These are no longer, like super boutique, guitars. Now they're great guitars. I know people who, in fact, we got people in the group who have them. Um,
Yep.
and I would
I think
totally buy one if they weren't imported at the price they were. But it is what it is. So just so you know, Strandberg's played by bands like Periphery and stuff like that.
Fuzzmonger has one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jason Buzzmonger has
Yeah,
one.
Jason.
Um, so this is the first one. I've actually played these, right? So this is an Aristides.
Yep.
Aristides is, I guess they're from, I want to say the Netherlands, but their guitars are all composite. They're basically plastic, some
Yeah.
sort of
I,
resin plastic thing, right?
I thought that they were resin over wood.
No,
Am I incorrect?
no, there's
It's
no.
totally
I
resin?
don't think there's wood involved in these at all. And I played one, and actually, I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised by how great it was. Um, Now the one I played was it was like some special order that the guy had ordered with his wife's name on the back of it, and then his wife died while it was being built. So he sold it to Guitar Center because he couldn't stand to look at it. And I have to say it was an exceptional guitar. I actually, it was in the store for a while. I went in, I almost played it one day. Jeff and I were going back and forth about it. And I was in there a couple months ago and it was still there. And I was like, nah, I got to get him to get it down. Cause it's just it's too like weird of a thing not to play one. And dude, every bit as good as like the Music Man guitars and the other high end, like modern guitars that they had, if not better. I don't know. I mean, I don't see Aristides as being a metal brand. I know a lot of metal guitar players use them, but they could definitely hold their own doing any genre of music, really, any modern genre of music. But by and large, they have a Floyd Rose on them, or at least the model, the 060 that's referenced in this article that I sent to Jim. Now, these guys, the next brand we're going to talk about, they're from Poland. So once I say that, you probably know who they are. We're talking about Mayonnaise guitars, and
now those I played one of those.
You have what was it like, Jim? Because I haven't played one.
It was okay. So I'm not a metal player, but I liked it.
How would you compare it to a Schecter?
I don't really feel. I thought it was nicer than a Schecter in the build quality and everything else, but I also thought that it had its own voice. That was, what's the word? It was tighter. Had a better feel all around. Not to say that Schecters are bad guitars, because they are not.
Well, the reason I reference Schecter is because Schecter has several models that are very similar to a lot of the Mayonnaise designs. Not all of them, because the Mayonnaise does headless guitars and stuff too.
The Mayonnaise I played was a 6-string, and it had it had a head. So, but as far as I was concerned, it was a really nice guitar. You could play anything on it. It was really good.
Now, and a lot of these brands actually do have conventional offerings too. Like, I mean, I wanted to point out Mayonnaise has like I guess it's the Akia series or Aquila series, which is like basically a modern interpretation of a Strat.
Of a Strat.
The Hydra.
That's the type I played.
The Hydra is basically what Kiesel ripped off. It looks now. I don't know if I don't know who came first, but the Hydra is just like a Kiesel Vader, except it has a small extra chunk of wood underneath the bridge. I'd love to get my hands on a Mayonnaise. I'd like to play one. Finding dealers for these companies is like next to impossible.
It's impossible. I ran into a used one, and I played the QM6, the Kia 2M6.
I think Mayonnaise also does an import line or something. I'd have to look into that. I think they do.
It's definitely not that.
So,
at that price point, I hope.
Now, here's where we're gonna get into some of the stuff you might be familiar with. Like, there's Legator, which Legator makes some cool stuff too. I would say they're more like a Jackson in a lot of ways. Like, they're more conventional in that sense. Like, their body styles are a little bit more Jackson-like. I would say the American heritage is definitely like in these guitars more than, say, Mayonnaise.
It's mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
Yes.
Mayonnaise.
There's no AI at
this. Is it mayonnaise? Is that?
It's mayonnaise.
I can't pronounce these damn names. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's mayonnaise.
It's my white American problem. I can't pronounce names that do not.
Yeah, we are definitely.
They're not Steve and Jim and
Western
Joe
European or Eastern European.
So I'm looking, and I'm actually just browsing Reverb to look at some of the Legator designs. I mean, they do a Tele style. They do kind of a Washburn style. I think I'm gonna have to go.
Obviously, it's the Ninja that
Washburn
sets them apart.
Dean style.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The Ninjas have the fan frets.
I thought, a lot of their guitars have fan frets. They do a Ghost headless too. which is actually a pretty cool looking guitar. And if I recall, you can get imports of these. I think they're 2,600 for a 7-string custom shop, and
Yeah.
then the 6-string is I think 1,500, but I don't think it's custom shop.
Yeah,
So
the 8 string is a little more money.
Anyway, so there's Kiesel, right? And they're listed here. So that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
they're on the cusp of becoming a boutique brand for this stuff.
Yeah.
Then there's Ormsby. Now,
Ormsby's out
obviously,
of Australia, right?
yeah, and we've talked about Ormsby on the show before because of the 18-string guitar they built for Jared Dines, which is mentioned right here in the top of this
Yep.
article.
If you haven't heard of Ormsby,
Yeah. So, all right. So here's what I heard about Ormsby. They do the Goliath GTR. I've heard the fan fret on those sucks. I've heard that it's like single notes only because the fanning is so steep, it makes it hard to chord.
right?
I also have
Makes
heard
sense.
that they're great guitars, and they do I guess they do a Goliath import for like $800 or $900, which is really really good.
Yeah,
Um,
super cheap.
but they do insane like custom level work too.
Yeah.
See if I can go to their website so we can talk about it more in depth. But I think at the end of this, we should talk about which brands we think are not influencing the market very much because their designs are so off the wall that they won't touch them. And I think Ormsby
Yep.
might be one of those.
Now the next one that we were looking at is Comparison.
Comparison.
Now
Yeah,
I've seen Comparison before.
they're available through, and they're Japanese. They're available through Sweetwater.
Yeah.
I am itching to play one. They just got Comparison at Gearfest last year, so they didn't have a lot of them on display. I actually want to play one because they're firmly like, here, we're gonna make a Kramer kind of thing.
Yep.
But slanted, and they do their own design changes to it. But like I'm
Yeah.
looking at the one that they have here is the Courtney Cox signature, which
The
has
Courtney
like
Cox.
27 frets or something, or 28 frets. And
Yeah, and so those
there's
who
no
don't
neck
know who
pickup; it's a
Courtney
middle
Cox
pickup.
is, she is the person that plays for Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
Right?
not
Yeah.
Courtney Cox, the actress that was in
Right.
Masters of the Universe.
Or what was she the one in Friends? Is that
Yeah,
Courtney Cox?
she was also in Scream, but I remember her fondly from Masters of the Universe, Jim. Her and Dolph
Yeah.
Lundgren.
Oh yeah. I remember that now. Yeah.
It's
No
music related.
comment.
They had that synthesizer in the movie that allowed them to go through dimensional portals.
Oh
Moving on.
man. Well,
What a movie,
the
man.
new Barbarella. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah.
And I know that Comparison. So like, Kill Switch Engage was at Sweetwater last year, and they were playing Comparison while we were there.
That's where I remember that from.
And
Not that I was at Sweetwater, but that's where
they sounded really good. I don't know what they were using for backline, but their guitars sounded freaking awesome. So yeah, I mean, I want to try their stuff. They're doing more conventional stuff than they used to. That's what I was seeing in NAMM when they were walking around the booth. So they're a brand to watch for. And actually, I think their guitars are probably more conventional on the list than say like Ormsby. Not as conventional as Kiesel, not as conventional as Legator. So, and then there's this one I've never seen or heard of, but it's called Strums.
Strums.
And they've got some weird looking stuff. The bodies are strange. Like this one I'm looking at here almost has like a flat back end. Looks like a Stratocaster with a flat back end in the butt of a Tele almost, like where the arm contour is at. Click over and look at some of their designs. I mean, they have outrageous tops. It looks like they do a headless model. Big surprise, all of these guitar companies are doing some sort of headless model now. And I mean, just looking at the details on some of these guitars, they are freaking outstanding looking, but they are very, very expensive. Here's one for $4,800. And I think these are actually kind of like more like a Bossy Concepts guitars in some cases, where the guitar is built to, it's built to be ergonomic, like to fit properly. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that these guys aren't helping out with the Abasi concept stuff, because there's like one guitar here called a Shoggy 7 single cut headless multi-scale guitar, and it looks just like a Abasi concepts idea. So yeah, and I mean they even do some semi hollows, but yeah, I think they're firmly in the Abasi concepts type of guitar. These are definitely unorthodox, but to say like 3,000, 4,000 bucks for one of these guys, that's not really out of the realm of possibility. Some of their guitars I'm seeing are 2,000. I mean, um, again, this is like another one of those things where they're probably influencing a portion of the market, and that's how you're going to get your hands on something that's, in the vein of Skirverson. But they look a lot more popular. I see them. There's like a bunch on Reverb.
Yeah.
So, to not seen these guitars in the wild is kind of wild. Well, yeah.
I like the reference in the article. It says those looking to hear these guitars in action need to look no further than Czech Republic-based Gentleman. The Gentleman.
Yeah,
I like that. The Gentleman.
Yeah, Gentleman. That's awesome.
They look interesting. I like the style, but nobody cares what I think. Well, this next one, Dunnable.
Yeah.
Dunnable. Yeah.
And so when I tell you the names of the bands that are playing these, if you're not familiar with the bands, it's not going to mean much to you. But if you are, you'll understand why. What these are: High on Fire, Power Trip, and Russian Circles. So these are, and I like how they describe it here in the article. The Sasha Dunnable says they have a no bullshit approach to how they build guitars. They're very stripped down. Actually, the one I'm looking at reminds me of kind of like an old Yamaha Revstar with a single pickup. Very like classy appointments, but you can tell this guitar is made for like doing the big heavy like riffing stuff. And
I could see me playing
70s heavy metal, right?
Yeah, I could definitely see me playing the Asteroid. Although this is one of those guitars where the headstock goes. Oh, jeez, what were you thinking?
What is the headstock? I'm looking. Man, some of the freaking wood choices they're doing on this stuff are insane.
Oh, it's incredible. The guitar itself looks amazing. Amazing. And then the headstock is just, their headstock is yucky.
Yeah. But, well, for that particular model, for sure. It doesn't look right.
And for $2,700, I want something more than a soft case.
Don't give me like a Gibson S headstock on a V. That's kind of crazy. Some of these guitars, I don't like the look of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually have a coworker messaging me right now. I hope he listens to my podcast. Go away. I'm going to ignore him. I just told him to go to bed. I literally just told him to go. I just told him to go to bed. Like,
you just told him to go himself.
I'm about to, like, honestly.
Okay, so the last guitar set, by the way, Dunnables, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Are built in America. And the last one is Carillion Guitars.
Yeah, and I've heard of them before. And
I've heard of them.
They make some pretty unorthodox designs, like really Longhorn style stuff.
Yep.
And they're pretty well respected.
Lots of frets, lots of cool stuff, lots of designs.
That's where I know them from.
Lots of interesting guitar wood choices. I think that Slipknot. That's where I know them from. Even I know them from Slipknot. So anyway, Carillion, they are, let's see, where are they from?
They're England.
Surrey.
Which Jamie Phillips, if you recall, we had conversations with Jamie Phillips. I think he mentioned them as well. He's somehow not affiliated with them, but like knew them, and it's a whole other thing. So he's got his own line of guitars that he's trying to. He said he's building, and then he says, "But I don't build for anybody yet." And he showed us some insane prototypes of stuff that he's building, and we're like, "Why?" They're not
Well,
good
now you
enough
know.
yet, in my opinion. Well, I'll take one of the seconds. I mean, you send me a B stock, I'll be more than thrilled. Um,
I I love this. The what is it? Enigma. The Enigma is pretty cool looking. Wow, look at that thing. Holy sheep. That's all I'm gonna say. Holy sheep. Incredible looking guitar, the Enigma. I could definitely see me playing one of those. Although I don't know what the price tags are. Apparently, you can choose your headstock too. You can choose different headstocks on different guitars. So, don't like the headstock? Change it. The Plagius. That looks like a cool guitar too. Their headless guitar is called the Plagius. And look at what they
are you
did.
sure it's not called the Plagueis?
Plagius?
Which
Plagius?
is a character from Star Wars.
Oh, is that what that is? It's a Star Wars
I
character?
wonder. Look at their.
Is that how you spell it? I don't
That's
know.
why I'm
I'm
going to
not
look.
picking up Star Wars.
Dude, I gotta find this out.
That could be a Plagueis. That could be Plagueis.
Darth Plagueis, the Wise.
Darth Plagueis.
No.
Plagueis the Wise.
Well, debatable.
That could be.
Debatable. Yeah, it might be. I think that's a great looking headless design.
Wow, that is a. I've never seen a headless design I like that. That's
Yeah, I would buy that.
yeah.
It's got some fancy hardware on it too.
Oh heck yeah!
Wow.
You asked, I listened.
All right.
4 years of holding off, I decided it was time. The Darth Plagueis is the.
There you go.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. I just threw in Darth. The Plagueis is the culmination of years of prototyping and R&D behind the scenes. Oh, I gotta say, he did a good job.
Well, it's gonna get killed off by the Palpatine model.
Yep, the Palpatine's coming soon. Yep, and then the Ray is right after that. Yep, Ray's gonna take care of it. So there's our walk down not so memory lane.
Well, so the reason
I want to say,
go ahead. The reason why I wanted to walk down that lane is because there's this like whole underbed, and I think I've mentioned on the show before, of like metal guitars that if you're not clued into that community, you have no idea they even exist. And these guys are like setting the trends for, all of the major metal companies, like the people that, market guitars to these kinds of players like Ibanez and Jackson, NESP and Schecter. And I mean, largely, yes, there's some emulation going on there, but I feel like their designs are so out there that even like they almost like they're making designs because they know they're not marketable for the big guys to like take a look at them. But I wouldn't be surprised. We saw this in the 80s where Charvel and stuff, all these small companies were kind of running around the big guys. And then all of a sudden, there were all these startup small companies like Valley Arts and stuff like that took these ideas and ran with them. And then we kind of had a similar reaction in the 90s. Well, the 90s kind of went back the other way because you had guys like Slash playing Les Pauls again. But I could definitely see like Ibanez and all these other companies getting more out there and more wild with their guitars. But what's funny is that Ibanez is doing both at the same time, right? So they're doing the Iron Label series at the same time as they're doing the AZs, which the AZs are yes, they're Sir knockoffs, but they're notably more traditional than what Ibanez normally does. And so I think it's a real interesting paradox there that they have to kind of walk both lines. And I think Ibanez is sort of like resting on its artist roster a lot now. And so the reason the AZ exists is because they wanted to get people like Martin Miller over on their label. And so for them to do that, the best way to do it was to attract them with an instrument that they would actually be interested in, if you know what I mean. So I don't know. It's clear to me that these are, interesting paradoxes that are going on in the industry. I granted, I think the long-term stuff is going to be, suitably more like distilled for the masses. So you're going to look at Strandberg and I go, yeah, you got a great design, but it's just like who's the, I'm Steinberger, like in the sense that it's so radical that I don't think you're going to get widespread adoption. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it.
No.
Because obviously, like, that's a piece of the pie too. And I guess if you don't try to grow beyond your market, like, that's really a good idea. But you had
Right.
Steinberger in the 80s who he couldn't keep up with the demand to the point
No, he couldn't.
where, like, it destroyed his company. I mean, he could have been a PRS, but he couldn't provide guitars fast enough and couldn't get the costs down. And that was
Right.
why he ended up where he was. Um, and so I see, like, Strandberg, they're not going to keep their costs down. Like, they're basically just going to sell $1,500, $1,700 guitars, import guitars, no less. So, and the reason why I take issue with that, and we've talked about this on the show before, but the reason why I take the issue with that is, like, it just doesn't make sense unless there's a very specific feature you need. You can't charge a $700 premium for an import, and that's what they're charging. And before anybody says, no, it's not a $700 premium. Look, the necks are CNC'd. Okay. That's how you do what they did with the Endura neck, right? It's a CNC design. There might be a little hand shaping there, but ultimately it's 99% done CNC.
Right.
The
Right.
body is CNC. It's a bolt-on design, I think. I want to say they're bolt-ons. And I could be wrong on that, but I know that I mean the guitar is not that functionally different than other instruments. Um,
You're talking about the Strandberg, which model?
any of them, they're all basically the same. I mean, they're basically the same in the sense that they're constructed very similarly. Um, and their pickups, yeah, their pickups are premium pickups, right? So that's fine. But I look at, like, Ormsby does their import headless guitar. Let's see if I can find out the price of that.
Yeah, they're headless. Or I mean, they're both.
And
The Strandberg.
yeah, I think. Well, I mean, the Goliath would be their. Um,
That's what I'm looking at a boat.
yeah, well, no, I'm talking about the Ormsby Goliath is the would be the competitor, and they do those in runs. They come out of China. I believe it's China or Indonesia. Um, they do have stock on Reverb. I think I'm looking. Well, they say see our
Here's an
remaining
Ormsby
stock.
in a Les Paul case. I just find this amusing because I can't believe it fits. Or Strandberg, I'm sorry.
What?
In a Les Paul case. I'm not even sure how they think this fits because it doesn't look like it fits.
Oh yeah, dude. I've seen people do some of the silliest stuff case wise, like putting Telecasters in Les Paul cases and stuff, and it's like, how? I don't even know how
It
that
doesn't fit.
fits.
It doesn't work. And this guitar obviously does not fit in this case. I mean, it's of course it's not. So anyway,
All
yeah.
right, so the Goliath, the Goliaths I'm seeing, and they're listed as brand new or excellent. These are resales, and they're $1,660. I don't recall the prices being that expensive to get on the run when they do them. So basically, what they do is they announce a run, and then you can put in your bid, and
Right.
it's like I seem to remember them being like $800 or $900. Now they might have been more
Jeez.
than that. They might have been $1,000. Okay, so now they're running $1,330 USD for a 6-string, $1,380 USD for a seven
For the
string.
Ormsby.
Yeah, for the Ormsby. They are totally upfront about where their guitars are made. They're made in Korea, which we know Korean manufacturing is a little bit more expensive.
Yep.
And I'm looking to see what kind of pickups and stuff they have, so we can talk. They're their design pickups. So yeah, okay. So Strandberg's getting a little bit more money, and I think the problem is with Ormsby, maybe that Strandberg's setting the price, but you can't tell me that you're not paying a tax to get that Endura neck, and that you're not paying a tax to get the odd body shape that Strandberg does.
Right.
That's just false. You're getting these guitars from the same companies that build PRS, and they build, that's what get. It's like, oh, well, suddenly because they're doing something special that makes the guitar price jump, 35% or 40%. No, you're paying a premium because it's something special. And I just don't want to pay that premium. And I'm not going to pay that premium. So I'm not trying to disrespect anybody who likes Strandberg guitars. I just don't see the allure of spending the extra $500 for a guitar that you could get for $1,000.
from Ormsby.
Well, not from necessarily Ormsby, because
Well,
we just said the Ormsby's
you can go to
$1,330.
Kiesel.
Yeah, I mean, you can get Kiesel for like $1,200, and it's made in the USA with
Yeah,
premium pickups.
and it's made to your colors and
You know,
specs.
I don't know. Some people would not consider their pickups premium pickups, but yes, exactly. It's made to your specs. Like, you're not limited to the color choices. The only thing you're not going to get versus that is the Endurance neck.
All right, so have we beat this one into the
Yeah,
ground?
I think it's time to switch gears. Maybe we'll come back
All
to it at
right,
the end of
so
the episode or something.
I wanted to talk about costs because something hit me today. So like I said, I've watched a lot of documentaries, and today I was watching a documentary about this guy is over in China, and what he does is he goes to these Chinese places that sell the little things you'd never think about when you're buying stuff. Okay, and what I mean by that is he's going there to look at stuff like screws, nuts, bolts, lights, and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And small like switches and like if you're putting a pneumatic together, you need an L bracket to to turn the pneumatics or if you're using oil based stuff. So he and two other guys are going through to buy stuff to build things back in the States. So they're buying little parts, right? Piece parts. And they make the comment while they're there. They said, well, they were talking about how you'll see you'll see in uh, Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, somebody will be driving a little forklift, right? And it has a light on top, and the light will be spinning around to warn you that the thing is coming on top of the beeping that it makes if it's backing up and going forward, right? Well, they were buying these light fixtures because you can buy them stacked, right? You can have. I am going somewhere.
Yeah,
It's like red, yellow, and green, and so on and so forth. You can make them make different noises depending on what they're doing, and that way, if you've got a machine down and you're in a big factory and you've done this stuff, and I've said before, I work for a company that builds capacitors. My daughter actually works for another company that builds capacitors now,
yeah.
and um, she used to work for that same company. She's moved on to another one, but anyway, so same thing. They've got machines that have those things on them. And these machines actually come from overseas, over in the east, because you can see the writing in a lot of the instructions and maintenance stuff is in Korean or it's in Chinese or whatever. So anyway, what I was getting at is that these guys were talking about how, oh yeah, if you bought this in the States, it would be this much because it would be made of metal, and this would be made of a heavier plastic, and this would be made of this, and it would be made by people, which got me thinking about. And then he said, and they didn't have to do any R&D; they just created it. And so the thing I was thinking about was this, So we often talk about costs that go into guitars, or in pedals or anything else. And the thing we forget, I think many of us often forget, is that there are people. Um, Different companies have different sizes, right? And some companies are doing engineering; they're modifying things or making changes. Some companies have got marketing teams, right? And they're paying marketing teams. And when it comes to guitars, you've got artist relation teams that are out there. They're out there, patting the backs of and you want to say something right
That
now.
is definitely where Strandberg's money is going.
Yeah. And so if you're one of these companies, right, that's an overhead you have.
Yep.
So I'm getting to this because of all these companies that build um, uh, reproductions of our favorite guitars. Our being
Yeah, they can make them
the
dirt
guitar,
cheap because
because they don't have any of these costs.
right.
If something gets engineered, they just reverse engineer it. They just put it into something.
Yeah.
Um, it and they they can come out with, oh, look at me, I've got this guitar. It looks just like the one that Angus Young plays, or it looks just like the one that Eric Johnson plays, or who pick your favorite artist. It looks just like that exact same thing. It's the exact same thing, but it's not. But it is, and a lot of the things are the same thing. And then the problem that you fall into when you buy from these folks is that we don't continue the artist relation. We can't. At some point, somebody has to say, we have to cut costs. Where are we going to cut costs? We're going to cut costs in engineering. We're going to cut costs in
parts
design. Yeah, parts. And so
or labor.
I was doing my video on my my Telecaster today for Nick Bonk.
Yeah, it's going to happen. He's actually doing it.
Well, all I got to do is sync up. Now I got to sync up the audio on the phone.
Yeah.
But here's the. I kind of want to redo a part of it, but I'm like, just get it out there. I cut my finger. I show people in the video, so I cut my hand pretty bad. Anyway, so the guitar has a chunk taken out of it. I really didn't think much of it. Look at there's the finish is gone, the wood is exposed. Okay, so this is I'm just making a point here. So this is a Squier Affinity Strat, right? Or I mean Telling, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the wood closely because I'm like, wow. This what a piece of crap. It looks like somebody took a bunch of matchsticks and just glued them all together. It literally looks like
that's pine, Jim.
Yeah, what's that wood? But it's not just
like
pine.
fiberboard.
What's that stuff where it's kind of like fiberboard. I'm like, are you serious? This thing is a hunk of crap.
Yeah, they used to veneer them too.
I have better wood in my cutting board. It's like I cannot believe that it's actually just a piece of garbage underneath all that pretty finish.
Yeah,
because the finish looks great.
Yeah,
and the wood underneath. But if you veneer,
they veneer the front and the back, and then the edges are not veneered, and that's and nobody looks at the edges.
No, if you can hide a lot, so that's what I want to get to is, I mean, if you don't care about that, it's fine. You don't have to care about that. You don't have to care about a lot of things. But the point is that when we look at Fender, we look at Gibson, we look at well, in this case, Strasberg, right? We got to remember that for them that these guys are sending Ola England.
Oh no, right? No, Ola is not a Strandberg endorser. No.
Okay, who is it? Oh no, he's got Solar, right?
Yeah, he's got his own company.
Yeah, who's Strandberg has. But anyway, my point is, they have to send somebody over there to pet their egos. I mean, periphery.
Whoever's Sarah Longfeld is one of their endorsers, and they put guitars in the hands of people to get them to demo them and do YouTube videos and that kind of stuff. Like, that's all a cost. I don't think the cost for them is as high as, I think they're making a bank right now. I don't think they're actually spending that much on artist relations, because I recall Sarah Longfeld actually saying that she's bought the guitars from them that she has. But
well, that's not. But there is the sourcing of parts. You gotta pay somebody to source parts.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't have enough information about how they do that. But I will tell you this: Thomann has a headless guitar now that's like $300. That is very much in the same ballpark. Now, different hardware, obviously. But Agile also, and I linked you Agile.
Oh, Agile
they have headless guitars as well. Legator makes one for about $750. That's an import. So I just want to point out they exist. Right. What you're paying for is their patented neck. They have a patent. That's where your money's going. Patent lawyer. And so to keep that patent, there's various things they have to do from legal requirement standpoints and all these different things. And I'm sure there is still some artist relation stuff going on. They still have to market their product. I don't think their marketing is that great, frankly. Um,
No.
but they're doing it, and they're from Sweden, right? So they have like one of the highest tax rates in the world for business.
Yep.
So that's another whole another can of worms. Plus, a lot of their business is done internationally because they're importing a lot of these guitars from foreign countries. So it's a whole thing. Like when you stop and you look at where they're at, I mean, yeah, there's definitely costs associated with what they're doing. I think their margin is much higher than, say, ESP LTD. That's my estimation.
Yeah.
Who is another company that primarily makes its money off import guitars. Um, Now, I don't know what Strandberg's business model is. They could very well be selling a lot more custom shop guitars than they are their production models. But I will tell you this: I'm not going to spend. And you remember, I bought that Ibanez for over $1,000. It was an Indonesian model. I returned it, and it was
Yeah.
because I didn't vibe with it. But part of it, like in the back of my mind, the entire time I had it, was like, dude, this is an $1,100 import. It's just nuts. When you could go spend $1,200 or $1,300 and get a Kiesel, it doesn't make sense. Or get an American Fender or whatever. I mean, there are other guitars out there, and you can buy used, and you can still get decent quality. I'm not saying America is the be all end all here. I mean, you can obviously buy great Japanese guitars, and you can buy great Korean stuff too. Um, but I think you lose out features when you start going into the bargain basement stuff. You don't get, like, the Affinity Tele is a good example. You don't get the same bridge that comes on all their other guitars. It's an Affinity
Oh my
bridge,
God.
and so therefore you cannot change out parts unless you dig around and find saddles that'll fit it and this whole thing. And that's part of the reason why I didn't buy an Affinity, because it's like, well, I wanted to do it as a project. But if I was to buy an Affinity Tele, like, I'm screwed because I'm going to end up having to mount a new bridge from scratch. And I don't want to do
Yep.
that.
And I don't have a router, by the way.
Yeah,
So
I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax there. Um, so it's all food for thought. Um, Try to make an informed decision. If you're gonna buy, if you think that Endura neck is worth the $500 tax, in my opinion, then go for it. It's probably not really a $500 tax. I'm probably exaggerating. It's probably a $300 tax. But it's $300, man. Like, that's a lot of stuff you could buy. That's what I'm planning to buy this week. It's like $300, dude. That's too much cash to leave on the table for me. And I don't think the Enduranac is going to be that life changing for me. In fact, if it is, that would be a problem, because then I won't want to play any of my other guitars. It's the same problem as the Floyd Rose guitar. So, it's a crutch. And I say that, obviously I'm being inflammatory. I don't really mean it's a crutch. Like, if you play Strandberg's fine, I don't care. It's just, for me, I know that I struggle going back from a 7 and 6. It, like, flipping back and forth regularly. So I try to do it all the time. So I'm used to it. And I know other people probably struggle with the same things. Although I will say this, now that Harley Benton's doing that headless, which it's kind of ugly. It is $370. It's kind of ugly. But now that they're doing it, I'm kind of like, that makes a good backup. I wish they did it in a 7-string, you know? Um, I'm sure there will be a 7-string model. So I could just wait, I guess. Anyway. Yeah, so,
yeah.
we've explored the realms of, like, modern metal guitars tonight. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the stuff that goes into changing.
so what did you buy, Jim? Because we're doing this backwards tonight. What did you buy?
Oh yeah. So I got this. Did we talk about this already?
This. We're not video,
What? We're not a video
not
thing.
yet.
We need to go
Not
video,
yet.
Mister.
Soon.
So I got this pedal train Nano. I don't know why I'm showing it, because it doesn't matter. Um, I got a pedal train Nano, a second one, so that I can make my main pedal board smaller, like my other pedal board. Also, I got the Carbon Copy Deluxe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So how you liking
yeah.
the carbon copy, by the way?
Oh, I love the Carbon Copy. I already loved it. I did add the mod. You recommended I tried the mod, so I did put the mod in, and I'm using a little bit of modulation on
It just
the.
helps makes things sound a little bit bigger, especially in a mono setup.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and I mean, I don't know how you use your delay. If it's a longer delay, mod seems to have a bigger impact to me. Shorter delays, it
Yeah.
almost becomes like a chorus.
Mine's a 330 millisecond, give or take.
Yeah, so you're long delay at that
That's
point. That's
relatively
like
long.
big stadium delay. That's the way I think of it. It's like a stadium echo.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Dude, I run my delays 275 milliseconds around there.
Yeah.
Which
Yep.
is big lead delay. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, mine is anywhere between 280 and 330, depending on what I'm stepping.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I had a carbon copy years ago, and actually the reason I sold it was because it didn't have tap tempo. That was like the deal breaker for me. And
yeah, this one does, which is cool.
I like those pedals a lot. And yours has the bright mode on it as well.
Yep.
So
yep.
Yeah,
I what's weird is I added the bright, then I put the mod in.
So you're getting the smaller pedal train, and I'm assuming this because you're running fewer pedals, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Where are you gonna put your power supply?
Yeah, so we talked about that. So I've either got a side mount power supply, which I've thought about, or I've got to
side mount,
which would look stupid.
What the hell?
It would be
Jim,
like
how
this.
are you going to plug it in? The plug's on the back side of it.
I know. We would have to go
it would have to go tall.
Back side.
Jim uses
exactly.
Jim uses a Voodoo Lab Pedal Power Plus. So if you're not familiar, it's like a long brick, right? So if you're going to mount it on the side, so you're mounting it so that the smallest side of the brick is down.
No, yeah. So it would be the outputs would be on one side and left or right, and then the power would be left or right.
Yeah, so it would have to be tall. Like it would have to be.
Yeah,
because I'm like
ridiculously stupid.
Yeah, dude, you're just gonna kick it the whole night.
No. So what I'm gonna have to do exactly. So what I'm gonna have to do is I've got to raise it up. So I'm gonna look for some of those little feet. You get like Walmart or whatever.
Well, I told you what to do, Jim. I told Jim. I said just go get some dowel rod, drill some holes in it, countersink the holes, so you drill bigger hole halfway down, and then use some self-threading, self-tapping screws. And actually, I've done this before, which is why I told Jim what to do. Fill your holes with epoxy. Take the existing feet off, fill them with epoxy, drill the new self-tapping, self-threading screws into the epoxy, and you're done.
Yep.
Like you got taller feet.
Yeah.
That you can make it as tall as you want it to. If you want to make it 4 inches tall, you can make it 4 inches tall. Just remember, you're going to be lifting your foot 4 inches to put it on there. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I think those the Novo series when they pedal trained about 5 or 7 years ago, they redesigned their entire line, and they went to this like weird format for the rails. And like nothing is one rail, no pedal fits across one rail. It fits across two or like 1 1/4.
No, yeah.
And
it's like
I know that there was a logical engineering decision behind that, but by God, they just made it worse. Like they should have just left them alone. And then of course now you've got the Novo, which replaced the pedal train Mini, and it's not raised at all in the back, which means that it's literally a flat board. So you might as well just buy a flat board. It's stupid. And in this case, you can't mount a pedal. You can't mount a power supply underneath it. So it's like if you're going to buy this board, you're only supposed to run off batteries. You can. I bought pedals in the last 2 years that don't have a battery jack.
Yeah, and so I would either have to run it off batteries or off of like my other one, run it off a what do you call it? A one spot.
Yeah, one spots are all right, folks. I'm gonna say it. You can send me your hate mail. One spots suck. Don't bother. Cool. I mean,
well, no,
they have a purpose, but it's not a good one.
Yeah. All right. The fact
they do make the nicer isolated one spots now, but the when I'm talking about the one spot, I'm talking about the daisy chain with the one plug that gives you like 1500 milliamps or 1700 milliamps.
Yeah, for the whole
Yeah.
thing, which is not really annoying.
Well, no, it's not. It's
And it
not
doesn't
that they're
isolate.
noisy. That doesn't isolate
Right,
anything.
right. It
Um,
doesn't isolate.
and if you've ever played with any sort of vintage pedal, you're just going to be chasing your tail. They're more trouble than they're worth. I would highly recommend you use just a RFI EMI, or is it EMI EMS, whatever, um, power supply like I have under my desk here, like a power strip, and then just put that on the back of your board and plug a bunch of adapters in there. Because in
Yeah.
all honesty, you're making more trouble for yourself by using the one spot. Um, and I know there'll be people on the show. I use the one spot for years and it's fine. And I listen, if it works for you, great. I had a one spot situation for a number of years, and when I finally bought a truly isolated power supply and I plugged everything in the first time, I went, "What the hell have I been doing?" It just didn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah.
So, um, but yeah, just raise it up. Like, you should be fine. I just they don't have any. If you think about it, the Pedal Power 2 Plus is about 3 inches tall. So that means you're going to have to raise that board 3 inches off the floor. Like, that was not a good design. They should have at least made the back slanted so that it was at least a little
Yeah.
bit.
A little higher.
Well, and I told Jim the other option was, of course, put the Pedal Power Plus on top and put a pedal on top of it,
Yep. That's what I thought about
which a
too.
lot of
Yeah.
people would do that. And I think Pedal Tree may make risers, which are basically just bent metal that you know, self-threaded screw in. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility. You should, you
Yeah.
could look at that. Uh,
I could do it that way.
so you got that. You got the delay. I am buying a Headrush FR8 tomorrow. The um, the reasoning behind this is we've talked about FR cabinets on the show a number of times. I've heard from several reputable sources, some of which who are listeners of the show have told me that the headrush cab should be more than adequate for being able to do some FR kind of comparisons.
Right.
I need a wedge for playing out anyway. So for $200, even if it's a crappy wedge, it's better than nothing. Which is when I play with old Stumpy, like a lot of times I can't hear the monitor because there is no monitor for me. It's like I'm standing on the end, and then there's like a monitor in between, the two vocalists in the middle, and I am like leaning over trying to hear
Yep.
it. Um,
Yep.
so I'm gonna go ahead and pick one up. As soon as I get it, I was talking to Jeff Biesiadecki. So Jeff has graciously built some patches for some people using the HXFX,
Yeah.
and he's tech savvy enough. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna try to dial in some Kemper stuff, and we're gonna try to put together some Kemper patches that I can use. So it is kind of selfishly motivated, but I think it will be an
Right.
interesting discussion as to how the philosophy for how you dial in a patch with the Helix versus the Kemper differs. And when we sit down, I'm gonna walk him through the controls and like how everything works, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna get up to speed with it really quick because it's not a difficult unit to work with. I think a lot of people
No.
freak out way sooner than they should. Just like now, I'm comfortable now. Even if like somebody says, "Oh, you're too hot on stage," I just hit and hold the output and turn my master down, and it's not a complex or even difficult thing to accomplish. Um,
Right.
so just word the wise on that. I think we're gonna do that, and I think I'm gonna talk to him and see maybe we can video some of it, at least the end result. Talk through the thought process of how we do it. And then I'm gonna use these patches, and I'd like to video my use of them, so that we
Yeah.
can kind of demonstrate. But it'll be interesting because I will probably bring my cab, and we will have my cab there too, so we will be able to actually do both at once, and then kind of we'll be able to see the difference. Using a conventional like small cabinet with a V30 versus using um an FRFR system, and I don't. So this is my personal impression of what we're going to find out. The FRFR is not going to replace an actual guitar cabinet. What the FRFR is going to provide is something that you can monitor through. because I don't see even the guys that I know that are real big in modeling, they're not backlining, wedges. Like they're going into the PA. The wedge is not there to provide the audience with anything. That is there to provide you
Nope.
on the stage with something you can hear.
There you could. Yep.
So I think that's a little bit of the misnomer, and that's actually why I kind of take issue with Friedman, because they make that box. It's like, oh well, here's an amplifier that you put your Helix into, and it's a make loud box, and I'm okay with that. But
It's the McLeod
it,
box. You got to
yeah,
remember
it's the
Chums.
McLeod box. I hashtag McLeod box.
Yeah.
And it's not a wedge shape unless you buy that specific one. They make two different versions, and the one that a lot of people buy is the cabinet shaped one. And you're just going to point that at your calves? Like what? That's not the purpose of an FRFR system. The purpose is so that you can hear it. You're supposed to run signal out to the front of the house, and it's the same thing. I saw a guy on YouTube a couple weeks ago in a live performance with his power cab and a freaking microphone in front of it. And I'm like, you're defeating the purpose.
What?
Like, I know you can do that with that. That's the point of the speaker modeling. But you're plugging a modeler that has direct outputs and IRs.
You could just plug that XLR that you got into the microphone, just take it out and put it in.
Everybody I talk to is a pro, right? Like people that play out frequently and get paid for it. If they have the option to FRFR, they're like, we're doing the FRFR. I am taking the microphone placement out of the sound guy's hands.
That's right.
Because let's face it, microphones get bumped. It's not the sound guy's fault per se, but it's, microphones get bumped and they can be inconsistent. And even as much as an inch distance between you and the speaker cone that you don't normally have can throw you off. Yeah. So I totally get it. And then to hear, you're going to put a microphone in front of a power cab? Like, that just totally defeats the point of that thing. Exactly. It's for you to monitor.
Yeah. And if you want to send that out to the audience, that's what the line out is.
Well, yeah, and see, even these FRFR systems, they usually have a line in and a line out, so that you can continue to. Well, so then that's another thing I've seen people doing lately, and I think that guy that bought the Kemper stage and he had the Helix. You know who I'm talking about? The guy that buys all the Chinese guitars. We talked about him on the show before. We don't need to talk about his name because I think we've had this problem before. His first name is Chris. If you remember that episode, then that is the guy. Chris was talking. I think it was him, and I could be wrong on this, so we're not really badgering him anyway. He talked about running his guitar out to an FRFR and then running a separate line out to his PA system. And I'm going, so wait a minute. You have a wedge in front of you that's giving you nothing but your guitar. I honestly lost it. I started cracking up because I'm like, what the hell is the point of that? Like,
right.
I mean, I honestly, and this is a problem I've had live. I'll get my monitor mix, like the guy that's mixing me or whatever. He'll just mix, like, it'll be a ton of my guitar and then none of my backing track. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can't tell what the hell's going on. Like, I can't hear the fills. Like, how do I know when I'm switching chorus verse and all this stuff? Like, oh my gosh. Because I do count, but sometimes, if I'm doing like a solo section, it's a lot harder to count. So I listen for like the drum fills because then I kind of know where I'm at. And I laugh because I'm like, they think, well, he's a guitar player. He wants all this guitar. And that's exactly what he would be going through. He would have his guitar cranked up and no other, like, no drums, no vocal, nothing coming through his monitor because he's just decided he's going to run a line out just to the monitor and a line out to the PA. And he was mad. He was throwing a hissy fit because his Kemper allowed him to do it, or his Helix allowed him to do it, but his Kemper would not. And I was like, well, first off, the Kemper will. Second off, why would you want to do that? Like, that doesn't make any damn sense.
Right.
So the Kemper, I have mine sitting here. I'm gonna flip it around just to point out that this is actually possible because you could do this. What you would do on the back here, there's a main output, which is there's I think they're tip ring sleeve jacks. There's two of those, and then there's also two XLR jacks, and then there's you have a return and a send. So you would take your main outs and put those into front of house, and then you would take your send and you would run that out to your you would run it out to it, or you could run your monitor output because there's actually a monitor output. Can you imagine that, Jim? They have not one set of outputs, not two, but three possible outputs on this thing. So, and this guy say, "Well, you can't do that." Well, you can. You just don't know how to use it.
Yep.
So, and then if you really get crazy, you could run the SPDIF too at the same time.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's actually four sets of outputs then. Can we count them? One output, two output, three
Yeah.
output, four output, four
The
outputs.
the count.
Did anybody see the? I guess it was Jimmy Fallon doing Jim Morrison Good Night and singing
Oh my gosh. Yes.
the Reading Rainbow thing. Oh
Yes.
my
He was.
gosh, dude, that was the best one he's ever done. I cried so hard when I watched it because like I
Laughing
would
my
watch
butt
him
off.
do a movie as Jim. Like it would have to be a comedy, obviously, because Jimmy Fallon, but
Right.
uh,
Right.
make my day. Um. Anyway, so yeah, the look for the headrush content. We're gonna talk about FRFRs. We're gonna get real dirty in them, and I know that the headrush is not the be all end all of FR systems. I would say it is the most affordable one. And I would also say that for the vast majority of people putting their toes in this water, um, most of them are probably just using wedges live anyway. And I don't know that this product really fits into that category. I think this is more for like weekend warrior, home warrior stuff where they don't have anything to monitor through. Um, I know there are pros using them, like the guy that Jeff was working with this weekend was telling me he was like, yeah, that guy's a pro. Um, and he's using it. So I was kind of like, well, if local pros are using it, then it can't be terrible. Because I mean, I've been in situations where local pros are using garbage, but um, that's few and far between. Like I feel like I'll get enough use out of it, and it's $200 for the 8-inch, which is what I'm going to buy.
Yep.
That's another thing. You buy one of these things, you can buy an 8-inch, you can buy a 10-inch, you can buy a 12-inch, you can buy a 15 because it's just a PA wedge, right? And I kind of like they were complaining because the 12 is kind of bassy. Like I've seen that said in some videos, and I had the Alto 12, and I had the 10, I think, and I remember it being pretty low endy. So I'm like, why buy the 8 then? Well, the 8's too quiet. Why? It's 2,000 watts with an 8-inch driver. Why would that be quiet? I fail to see, like, it's going to be like a horn. If anything, it's going to be piercing,
Yeah.
and it's going to shelve all that low end that I was complaining about. That's my thought, unless they're doing something weird to simulate that low end. But I mean, that's that's a whole other can of worms. Did we talk about the Kemper cone?
I don't think
We
so.
didn't talk about
No.
the Kemper cone last week. So
Oh no. Yeah. 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 We did. Yeah. Yeah. We did during the during our review of NAM.
Kemper cone came out. If I don't know how in depth we got into it, so I'm gonna just talk about it briefly. Kemper cone is their speaker. It's a Celestion speaker that they designed with Celestion. You can be able to buy it through Kemper. It's going to be about $200, 150, $160. And it is actually two speakers in one enclosure. It is a true full range speaker, right? And doesn't have a tweeter. That inner cone is called a whizzer cone, and it is literally like a 4-inch cone inside of a 12-inch cone. And I don't know how, I don't even know. It may have a separate voice coil. I don't know. But anyway, what they were The reason they developed this thing was because they wanted you to be able to take this speaker and put it into other cabinets. Now, they are going to do a cabinet too, which looks pretty cool. It's green and it's got brown corners. I thought this thing was going to be expensive. You know how much they're getting for this, Jim? $400. That's Mesa cab prices. It's nothing. I mean, in terms of a quality cabinet, $400 is nothing for a 1x12, especially with something super specific like that. Now, Kemper Cone, he's not going to make Kemper a lot of money. Kemper Cone is purely for people who own Kempers. They're not trying to be the Line 6 power cab and create this unique product that people with all kinds of modelers across all kinds of genres can use. They realize that there are Kemper users that have a need for this, and they can provide it. And it's apparently was not a really expensive development project, and I think they were very interested to do it. So this is why I'm talking about this. This is an frfr, but it is not an frfr. So in the traditional sense, it's not a PA wedge, and it's not designed to be a PA wedge. This is designed to do what the power cab does, which is to emulate a speaker. So the idea is that you use your Kemper and you tell it, I want you to be a greenback. And then it does frequency mapping over that speaker to make it sound like a greenback, to give you the amp in the room thing. And I guess it could be used as a full range system. And they were saying like, yeah, it's pretty flat. It's not a completely acoustically neutral. It's designed to give you some guitar speaker flavor, but it's designed to sound really damn good flat too. So you could conceivably use this with another device. But the real reason you're going to want it is if you have a Kemper, you get the speaker modeling. And I guess it's relatively lightweight. But I'm also talking about putting this in a Mesa Boogie cabinet. And the reason why I'm talking about putting it in another cabinet is because they don't make an open back Kemper cab. And I really need to get an open back cabinet. And it's going to help with the dispersion. It's going to help with the beaminess. It's going to help with my aversion to high end. And there's like a whole bunch of reasons I want to do this. But that's going to cost me some bread because I'm going to have to buy. I don't know if I can buy an unloaded Lone Star cab. I think I can. I may be able to get Mesa Boogie to sell me just the shell, and then I can put a Kemper. And if not, I'm sure I can buy one and sell a speaker. That's not even an issue. Actually, I would rather keep the speaker, frankly. But that's the long-term end game for this, is to use that to do a higher end FRFR comparison. Like what a more mid-range system would be. And I think, Jim, you and I at GearFest need to track down the ability to try out like Mission Engineering, the Mission Engineering cab, the really fancy one, the Gemini.
Yeah.
I heard the Gemini last year, and I don't know if I played through it or not. It was somebody who was with me at NAMM. Did I play through the Gemini cab? I know I heard it last year. And I went, yeah, that's hands down the best FRFR I've ever heard. But at the same time, I was kind of like, dude, it's $1,000 and it weighs 70 pounds. I mean, it doesn't get more impractical than that.
That's why it's the best one you've ever heard.
Yeah, because it's like pull out all the stops, spare no expense,
Exactly.
Whatever. So it's interesting that I've heard that the Headrush FR, this is gonna be and kind of wrapping things up, but I've heard that the Headrush is like the best selling FR system, like specifically for guitar, right? And it's because of the price point. It's dirt cheap. It's $200 for the 8-inch. It's $300 for the 12-inch. You can't touch a powered monitor for that right now. Like when JBL does their deal, you can get one, but right now they're not doing their deal, so you're gonna have to pay. So it's interesting, and this is the what I was getting at. If you buy a JCM 800, most people are going to buy a nice 1960 A cab to go with it, or a nice, vintage 30 loaded Marshall cab or something to go with it. And you're talking a $2,000 head, unless you buy the studio version or whatever, a $2,000 head or $3,000 head, depending on what you get, with a $700 or $800 cabinet. Now my Kemper was $2,000 plus. Actually, mine was significantly more expensive because I got the remote with it. It was $2,700. I did not pay that. And then I want to put it through a $200 frfr speaker cabinet. Does that not sound nuts?
Oh yeah,
And
that's what I'm saying.
it's because the frfr is just to make loud box. You don't buy it for
Right.
sound quality. And in most
Exactly.
cases, you're not even pointing it at the audience.
Hashtag McLeodbox.
Yeah, you're not even pointing it at the audience. So
No,
put that in perspective.
exactly.
One last thing. So we talked about the string video in the beginning. I want to make this real clear, and I want to say this in the nicest way possible. But this idea that um, you use a tube screamer to roll off bass and like enhance the mids on a track, and they were kind of insinuating like, well, they're just trying to do the same thing you're doing by lowering strings. That's total crap. I wanted to talk about it when we talked about it earlier in the episode. I know I forgot. It's in my notes here. That's actually, you heard me typing a lot during this episode. I was looking up things. I was communicating with a coworker, and I was also reminding myself to talk about certain things at the end of the episode. And when I hear somebody say like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't do that because you really want to do this," like, how do you know what I'm trying to do? I don't kick the tube screamer on to cut my bass. I kick the tube screamer on to kick the mids in the teeth. You know, it's
Right.
it's like, okay, but you're neglecting the other part of this argument, which is the tube screamer doesn't do exactly what you're saying it does, which is to lower the bass and low mids. It does a lot more than that. It actually bumps up around 1,000 to 2,000 hertz. I mean, and actually probably more from like 750 hertz up. Um, it's a very like almost like a wah pedal, cock to wah kind of like push, but very subtly so, not like that's overdone. Um, and however you choose to get your sound, don't let somebody tell you that, oh well, you're doing it the wrong way. Like, could you imagine if somebody told Jimi Hendrix like, no, I don't like the sound of the distortion you're getting. You need to add an extra gain stage to your Marshall Plexi. Like, what? What? I mean, who tells these people what to do? And so I immediately get up in arms when I see one of those videos. It's like, well, you're doing it wrong. Or even if it's not really saying it, you're doing it wrong, but they're insinuating that there is a right way to do it. Or that there are other. Now, if there are other approaches to do something, that's fine. But like, acknowledge that, yeah, okay, so this is one way to do it, And I just felt like that video was very much like Brett used to go to the studio that I can't remember his name. He used to go to that studio that who's the channel that hosts that video, the original video. I can't remember his name offhand. The old guy that does all the
Beato?
Rick Beato. Okay, so he used to go to Rick Beato's studio all the time, and he used to play Rick Beato's guitars and complain because Rick Beato would always have 8 and 9s on him.
Right.
And of course, Rick would be like, he was just doing it wrong. And that gets said in both videos, his video and Rhett Scholl's video. So it's like, well, that sets the tone for that video. It's like, well, clearly you know better. It's just wrong. It's not the right way of thinking. This is art. We paint with whatever brushes and colors we choose. And if you don't
Exactly.
like them, kiss our ass. By the way,
Yep.
I found out that the pink setting on my Philips Hue bulbs is not actually pink. It's like a purple hue. And that was not a pun, an intended pun. But if you say magenta, then it becomes very bright pink.
It's magenta.
My wife and I were having fun with those this afternoon. So
Did you ever see? All right. Have you ever been to the Rocky Horror Picture Show? And they
clearly,
go,
Jim doesn't know me very well.
What's your favorite color? Magenta. That's why. Anytime I hear somebody say magenta, that's all I can think of is
I'm
the
going to
character in
reveal a
Rocky
very
Horror.
private, intimate thing to this our show's audience. I loathe
The
the
Rocky
Rocky
Horror
Horror
Picture
Picture
Show.
Show. My wife is a huge fan of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And this is not because I'm doing it to, Jim's pointing himself to, and I'm not surprised. I'm not saying this because uh, I'm, trying to be counter to everybody else or whatever. I just have never liked it. And they'd run it on VH1 or whatever, and I would watch it and try to like get something out of it. And it was always like, I was like, I can't tell whether it's trying to be like a horror movie or like a spoof or it's a bad movie is what it is. But and I think it was intended to be that way. Um, the only redeeming quality about that movie is that Meatloaf is in it. I mean, for me, that was like the one thing I was like, well, at least I can watch Meatloaf. And then of course they did the live version of it on TV a couple years back. And of course, I had to sit through that.
Uh,
I just
the one they
can't.
did,
I can't, man. Like, I do not like that movie at all. It's one of my least favorite, least pleasurable activities. If I have to sit through it,
the remake they did on Fox a while back
yeah,
was
that's what I'm talking about. It
awful.
was really
I
bad.
had so many high hopes for that, and it was terrible.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Well, it just showed that you can't bottle the lightning and then try to, bring it. It just doesn't work.
Well, I get why it's
I used
popular today because of the rebroadcastings and all that. And it's like you can go and see it in the middle of the night and all that. And the whole experience part of that. My wife has begged me to go to one of those, and I'm like, that's not gonna happen. I don't want to watch it at home. Why would I want to watch it?
It's not about a movie because it's not about the movie.
I don't want to participate in those antics.
Right. If you're going out and you're not participating in the antics or you don't want to be a part of it, then definitely don't go because that was.
I'd rather go to a Kiss show.
When I went to see Rocky Horror the first time, it was, oh my God, it was 1980. I don't know. It was early on in the Rocky Horror.
Yeah, so all the traditions probably weren't in place yet at that point either.
Well, a lot of them, yeah, but a lot of them had been because remember it started as a play.
Yeah,
and the traditions kind of got there. Then it went to a movie, so that everybody could do the things they did at the play. That's where it grew its feet. The movie is terrible. The movie is awful. It's god awful.
Yeah,
to sit and watch it.
I don't think the play is any good either.
And if the Patreons want to hear what happened to me at a couple of different Rocky Horrors, I can tell you. But let's just say that I used to dress as frfr, and I would go because my friends would go, and then they'd say, "Oh, we need a frfr," so I became part of a troupe.
Oh, okay.
So we did the whole act. I knew all the lyrics. I knew all the dialogue.
A couple of Christmases ago, some friends, mutual friends of my wife and I's, got her a Rocky Horror Picture Show t-shirt. And I know they did it to irritate me. And it has driven me nuts for years. Like, why would you do that? Why would you intentionally try to irritate me? Like, for our listeners of the show, you know how I can be. I'm the last person you want to irritate. That is not a good idea. That's how podcasts get started. That's how YouTube channels get started. That's how Twitter's, goes out of control. That's how, it's like, don't do that. That's not wise. Do not stir the hornet's nest. I will recommend that you do not do this. And I can tell you right now that the two individuals that did this, they know better. It's a subtle troll, and it's a good subtle troll because it's Christmas. You can't say anything. But man, revenge is a dish best served cold. That's all I can say.
Ice cold.
Anyway. All right. I've been David.
I've been Jim.
And tonight we've been the Practical Guitarists.